Today I'll show you how to create this responsive navbar inside of HTML and CSS. Actually, it is really easy. We are just going to create a nav container, and inside of this container we are going to create an anchor tag. Inside of our first anchor tag we can say home, for example. Then we can duplicate this anchor tag a couple of times, as often as you basically want. And let's say in our second anchor tag we have the text mission. Right here we have jobs, for example. Then we have an about section and a contact page. We're going to save this, and now we basically have this navigation bar. Let's go into CSS and start to style that. Let's create, or let's target our nav element, and let's say we want to have display of grid, and we want to have grid template columns of repeat 5 1fr. So each of these grid elements basically takes the same amount of space, and we have 5 elements since we have 5 pages basically. Hope that makes sense up to this point. Now let's start to style our anchor tags inside of our nav bar. And let's say we have a color of white, we have a text decoration of none, we have a font family of monospace. You can obviously choose whatever font family you want to use. Let's use a font size of 16 pixels. And let's say it works like that. Obviously now it looks like we just have 4 columns, but we can change that by using position of relative on this element. And now we have to add another element right here, which is a div element, and we say that this div has the class of color. And this class name doesn't really matter, choose whatever you want. But now we are going to use .color to target our color element, and we say this color element has a position of absolute and an inset of 0, which basically means top, left, bottom, and right is 0. And let's say we want to have a background of red, for example, or yeah, red is fine. And now we basically have this background. Now we obviously need to change the width of our .color selector, or of this div, to be fair. And let's say we want to have a width, and we are going to calculate this width based on the entire width. So we are going to say 100% divided by 5, because we have 5 columns basically. And as you can see, now one of those columns, or basically our color div, takes up the width of exactly 1 column. So basically exactly the width of 1 anchor tag. Now let's say this entire nav bar has a width of 80% of the total width. And as you can see, now our grid is spaced evenly and looks pretty good. Obviously this one here doesn't look too good, but we're going to fix this one next. So let's say we have a set index of -1 to push this color right behind of our nav bar text, and we're going to save it, and now our color is right behind our text. Still doesn't look too good, but it's getting there. So now let's say we have a text, a line of center to center our text, and now we can also say we want to have a padding to the top and the bottom of 20 pixels and 0 to the left and right. And now it looks like this, and this is a lot better already. And now we could also say we want to have a border radius of maybe 5 pixels, so we have like round edges, but we would actually need to use this border radius for our shape, obviously. And now we have this one right here. So let's use a linear gradient instead of a flat color, and say we want to have an angle for the linear gradient of 90 degrees, and we're going to use RGBA of 0001, for example. And then we copy our RGBA values and paste them in 2 more times. And now we can define a gradient that goes to a pretty blue color, like this. We're going to take those values, we're going to paste them in here, and we'll say that we want to have probably 0.5 for the opacity. And we'll paste them in here again, and we'll say we want to have 0.1 for the opacity. And now it basically looks like this already. It looks a lot better already. And for the last step, we basically need to animate our color selector once we hover over a certain link. And now let's say once we hover over an anchor tag, and to be precise, once we hover over the first child of an anchor tag, so the first element, we want to create a hover effect, and once we hover over that element, we want to change something inside of our color container. Now let's say we want to animate our transform property, and we want to be precise, change our translate X property, and we want to set this one to 0%, because once we hover over the first child, we obviously want to be in the beginning of our navigation bar. So let's copy this entire code, paste it in here, and let's say once we hover our second child, which is basically this child, we want to move our box 100% to the right. And as you can see, nothing is going to happen right here. And the reason for this is that we need to use the sibling selector, because obviously color is not a child, but rather a sibling of our A tags. And now we save it, and as you can see, it jumps from left to right. And now we are going to paste this in and do the same for pretty much every other element. Let's say this is the fourth child, and this is the fifth child. And obviously we also need to adjust our percentages. This is like 400%, 300%, 200%. And once we save and hover over all of the links, it's basically working already, but we could add a transition to make it a little smoother. So let's go into the color container, say transition of all 0.25 seconds and ease. And now we basically have this effect, and this is exactly what we are looking for.